Welcome to Rice TVX and the latest episode of Stranger Than Fiction. Today's guest is Derek Bros, who is also known as the Global Witness. He's a technologist, a cryptographer. He was a senior VP at Paramount Pictures, an executive at Microsoft, had a production company called Good Bro Pictures with Cuba Gooding Jr. He founded the DCIA, which is the Distributed Computing Industry Association. He helped to create Kazaa. He was involved with Anonymous. He's testified before Congress in regards to Kazaa and Morpheus and peer-to-peer file sharing. But that was another life. So we're going to go ahead and get to know a little bit more about Derek Bros and the Global Witness on today's episode. If you're watching this on a replay, I would say fast forward to the 4 or 4.5 minute mark to continue the conversation without all the advertisements. Now, here we go with some quick messages from the sponsors of Rice TVX, and you can find information down below in the video description for BitSwap DEX, Presearch, and Monarch.
BitSwap is the hottest new way to trade tokens. Crawling all the top decentralized exchanges, BitSwap will get you the very best price and value for your trades. BitSwap is changing the game. Try it now at bitswapdex.com.
As always, I will have links down below for everything that we talk about on today's episode. And if you're not already subscribed to Derek's YouTube channel, The Global Witness, that is linked below in the video description. And I definitely encourage you to subscribe. And we are currently live streaming on both Rice TVX and Rice TVX2, the backup channel. Both can be found on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to both channels. Make sure you hit that like button as it helps other people to find these kind of videos in the YouTube algorithm flow. If this just happens to be your first time ever watching any of my videos, I do encourage you to check out and explore my channel. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date with my videos as they come out. Also, due to all the recent censorship, make sure you subscribe to my backup channel, Rice TVX2, the sequel. And I've also recently deleted more than half of my videos on my main YouTube channel, which means you can find 100% of my content plus exclusive videos over on Odyssey and Library. If you haven't already, be sure to visit ricecrypto.crypto and sign up for the mailing list so that you never miss an update or new Rice TVX content. You can also find all my social media links as well as merchandise that is coming soon. If you'd like to support the channel directly, consider joining my Patreon, where I have 3 different levels of membership, or if you'd like to send a direct contribution or tip, I have my Cash App information, PayPal, and my CoinTree link for cryptocurrency addresses listed below in the video description. Take advantage of my partnership with Money Metals Exchange. Get your free half ounce of silver. All you need to do is be a first-time buyer, visit moneymetals.com, purchase a minimum of $100, and use the promo code RICE. You get that free half ounce of silver, and it's another way to support the channel. I will include links down below in the video description for everything I just mentioned, as well as everything that we talk about on today's show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I greatly appreciate you tuning in for today's very special live stream episode of Stranger Than Fiction. Derek Bros is a content creator that I came about, and he's much more than a content creator, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video. But I became familiar with the Global Witness YouTube channel pretty much right when it started, when I seen Anonymous Unmasked and Message from Vidius, and then his next video, Unmasked, Like a Thief in the Night, I think is the actual title. So I had a chance to talk to Derek back in 2018, and he left me bewildered and puzzled with something that he said to me that I hope that we can expound upon in today's live episode. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring in today's guest of honor, Mr. Derek Bros, the Global Witness. Derek, thanks for coming on today. How are you?
Great, man. Thanks for having me. I know I apologize. I know we've been trying to do this for a long time, but we finally got to make it happen. So I appreciate you having me on.
And likewise, I appreciate you accepting the invitation. And as we were saying before we went live, things happen as they're supposed to happen, not the way that me or I or anyone else may expect them. They happen the way that they're supposed to happen. And sometimes there's valuable lessons that we can find when we look back and be mindful of these type of events. So, but it has been a long time coming.
It has, but we're here now, so very excited to have this conversation.
And I appreciate everybody for tuning in for today's video. And please smash that like button. And thank you for being in the live chat. I know that you've talked about in some of your earlier videos that you don't really like to talk about yourself, which I completely understand. And I know that you were also willing to be forthcoming about your life and what led you to creating the Global Witness, because you've had a pretty interesting past. Everything that I said at the beginning, is that all correct?
Absolutely. All of that's correct. The Microsoft thing you said, executive, I ran the global wireless strategy and business development for Microsoft. And I did a lot of other things there, but I primarily handled a lot of technology around digital rights management and in the wireless industry and incorporating that in through that entire industry across the globe.
Cool. And another thing that really attracted me to your content was in those earlier videos that I mentioned, you were talking about decentralized networks, the power of decentralization, distributed networks, and things to that effect, and you being a cryptographer. So I definitely would like to touch on the cryptocurrency element throughout the conversation. I mean, I was telling you I have a lot of questions. And I guess the best way to do this, if you don't mind continuing to be open and forthcoming, and because this is one thing that I kind of don't remember from your videos, and I know that you've discussed it, and you don't have to elaborate or go into great detail. And if it's too intrusive, feel free to just say so, and we can move beyond it. But everything that I mentioned was your former life. Something happened. You had some sort of legal troubles, got arrested, ended up in prison, and some sort of transformation took place. And I would say almost like killed the ego of that dude that used to be you.
Yeah, you could say that, but it was really not, it wasn't prison that did that. It happened prior. Prison happened as a result of it. So okay. Imagine us today. Imagine everything that we know today, everything that you've seen, everything that's taken place in this world. Without going into the details, we all know it. It's not like you have to educate folks. It's insanity. And it's beyond what anybody could comprehend happening. Not only that, the things that we've learned about, true or not, but the things that we've learned about extraterrestrials, the things that we've learned about cosmological systems, the things that we've learned about ancient times, everything that we previously knew today that we thought was true is now a lie. So imagine that taking place when none of this was happening. You are a raving mad lunatic. Now, to be an executive and to have, thousands of people that know you and that you interact with on a daily basis, and you sit on board, on boards of different companies and everything, and then all of a sudden you walk into the board and you go, yo, none of this is going to work. We need to start preparing for what's coming. Because this is happening and this is going to happen. And they're like, this guy has lost his noodle. And it actually was those types of conversations that led to I would say, the setup that ultimately ended up landing me in prison and people coming to attack me at my house, because the way that I was talking to this one individual who's very wealthy and was in a very specific industry, in the multi-level marketing industry. And the way that I talked to him, he didn't understand my words. He heard them as threats, if you understand what I'm saying. Yeah. He thought they were threats. And I was telling him, and it's a crazy story. I don't want to, go into, dismantling that individual anymore at all. Than he's already had to do to himself, because now he's learned all of the truth about this. And ultimately, right. But so it was a remarkable thing that he ended up bringing people over to attack me because he thought I was going to come after him. And I'm a pretty intense person. And when I'm very serious about something and very focused on something, I recognize And it took me a long time to recognize the intimidation factor that I have. And I still have to constantly recognize that I do it. And I'm not trying to be intimidating. I don't know why, and I never understood it, but it's what allowed me to excel in the corporate world, is that I knew what I was doing. I was very confident in what I was doing. And I never really spoke at a turn. I never spoke and said, that can happen, unless I knew, for absolute certain that could be accomplished. And so when I, ended up having that confrontation, that ended up landing me in prison. Now, what happened in prison was all of these things that I had been shown prior to that. So it was, and I can't say that there was any one specific thing that triggered it, because it wasn't. It was literally like one day I was taken away and I was educated.
Okay.
And it took place over, I would say, over the course of a full day and a half, but I was gone. I don't even remember where I was. I remember, what I was doing. I have no clue, but it was like I thought I maybe had a breakdown or something, and that I was going through something. But all of these things that I was being shown and educated to were very explainable and real. I could explain them, but people couldn't understand when I explained them. So it was a very confusing thing for me. And what prison allowed me to do is, first of all, to be put into a situation where you better not have an ego. And
unless you're the biggest guy in the room and you can command the respect of everybody else.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing, is in prison, you realize the biggest guy in the room doesn't mean anything, because I watched the smallest guy in Los Angeles County Jail take out 5 of the biggest guys in the most proficient way I've ever seen. So,
wow.
And took them out. And you're like, wow, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm never going to fight a 4'5" dude. I'm just not, because he's going to kill me. And this kid was terrifying. So you really learn that, you definitely don't judge the book by the cover or how they look or how they talk, but you learn to respect one another. But you have a tremendous amount of time on your hands. And that allowed me to, to have books sent to me. And, and I earned some trust within the prison, because you're usually only allowed to have a maximum of 10 books. I had 950 books at one time.
Wow.
Actually let me have the top bunk at one point so I could have all my books. People would say, how come you're not over there lifting weights on the weight pile like everybody else is? And I was like, hey, look, come over here. I'll show you my weight pile. That's it. And what I was doing is I was scouring ancient texts, everything. Anything, anybody that ever said anything about anything. I ultimately ended up, while I was there, read probably somewhere in the area of 3,800 to 4,000 books. And I have a list of them somewhere. And that, spending that amount of time really going through it to find, I needed to validate the things that I had seen. And I needed to find the language. I needed to be able to point to it in a book somewhere and say to somebody, see, you see what I'm saying? I told you that, and now it's here in this book. And by the way, this book is 40,000 years old, written in cuneiform. So who is it that told me these things? Because I didn't just I didn't fall on a book, right? I didn't fall and hit my head on a book. I literally was shown these things, and it's impossible for me to explain, except I was just taken. It's that there's no other explanation for that. And that's actually how, because when I would tell people what happened, that's where I got my, the name that anybody, you'll always know when somebody served time with me, because they don't call me Derek or Global Witness. They call me Enoch. And because the story sounded so similar. And the ironic part is, even though I knew the Bible at the time, I was a self-proclaimed Christian and all of that, spent my entire life in the church, and I played in Christian bands and, played drums and sang and did all that stuff. My mom sang, and, we recorded an old country Christian record. And so I was very involved in that world, but I didn't really know anything about Enoch, because he's only mentioned a couple times and just God took him, and I didn't really know anything about it. I didn't know that there was a book of Enoch.
Right.
I had no idea. And for me to sit down with that book was like, what the... I just literally flipped my lid. It was terrifying. Actually, it was terrifying. And at the same time, humbling beyond recognition. Because it was so much bigger than me, so much bigger than I ever thought I could be. Everybody, what they would say, well, you want to give up that whole career for talking about this? And I was like, this is so much bigger than that. It is so much bigger than that. So I can't tell you, other than everything in me, and I mean literally everything, every fiber, everything, still to this day, everything in me feels that I need to execute on what I've been asked to execute on. It's the biggest job I've ever been given. And I'll tell you right now, the hardest by far. And I've done some hard, really complicated jobs, built some very difficult and complicated technical structures, decentralization, all of that. I mean, I've been very involved in that. And today, it just doesn't, I'll build something for what we're doing, but it's hard for me to get engaged and care about anything really.
That's worldly.
Doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter to me.
Are you talking about worldly things?
Yeah, worldly things. I mean, obviously I need to eat, and we still have to have the lights on, and I have to, so these things, all of this stuff, and the advancement of it's still costly and it's still worldly things, but it doesn't mean anything to me.
Right.
I'm prepared to lose everything I have more than once a day. And I'll tell you why. And this is where I say that, that the prison itself prepared me for this, is because, you would spend 6-8 weeks rounding up pencils or pens because you needed to write something. And so you would trade a coffee or you'd save your donut if they happen to have that for a meal, and I'd trade that donut for a pen. And usually it would have very little ink in it and some pieces of paper, and, and everything you have, because somebody else does something wrong in the prison, they'll come in and hit everybody's cell and take everything you got. So you're constantly losing everything you have, constantly. They make sure that you never are too comfortable. And that's where I learned to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
That's a good way of putting it. And I appreciate you being transparent and sharing that. And two, I mean, I think I've mentioned this to you in the past. I've talked about it on my channel a lot. I've been to prison myself. I spent close to 7 months, which probably isn't much time compared to a lot of individuals. It was a violation of probation for a DUI. And but I went in knowing that I was going to be starting a process of change, that I was going to use that time as the most beneficial time that I possibly could, even though I was in a place like that. Mm-hmm. So I was able to finally get my GED, and then get out of, once I got out, I was able to start going to college for business administration and just started my path of practice change. So I didn't want to put it in a negative light, because I think that a lot of people, it takes being in a dark experience in dark places to understand the beauty of the light and the good. And and then also, I think a lot of the individuals mentioned in the Bible were in prison and situations to that effect. So God uses the strangest people for the oddest situations to make huge impacts.
For sure.
It's beautiful. Would you consider yourself a Christian Gnostic?
No, I don't. I don't call myself
labeled
any specific label at all, and I never will. And as crazy as that is, just what you were just talking about, that you got your GED in prison, and I'll tell you, this kind of comes around to that, is that, I never graduated high school. I dropped out in the 9th grade, but yet I still became an executive. And it was amazing that when I'd been turned down jobs before because for CEO of major corporations. In fact, there's a company called Medtronic that's a diabetes corporation, and my daughter's type 1, and they were hiring me for the CEO, and finally came before the board, and the chairman of the board was so aggravated that I didn't graduate high school. I was like, Bill Gates didn't graduate from college or high school. I didn't go to college. And so he didn't hire me just because of that. But in prison, they offered me 30 days off my time if I got my GED.
Oh,
And I
wow.
said, absolutely not. I've come this far without it. I'm not going to be playing any of that BS.
Yeah.
So even then I wouldn't subscribe to even the label of having a high school education. I've been and I didn't realize, that I had rebelled against certain things my entire life. But yes, I don't subscribe to a name except to say Christ in me, because
Okay.
there is nothing other than that. There is that inside of me. And that doesn't mean that I'm always in that moment of Christ. It doesn't mean that I don't get pissed off and I don't get angry. And as I said in my last video, of course. But for the most part, I can maintain that, and I can walk in that, and I can govern myself, and I can do that. I would say probably about 90% of the time, but it's a way of life. It's not a ism. It's not a corporate anything. It's
Right.
just me. I am me. I am. That's where that comes from. I am.
I am. Yeah, I've done a lot of studying when it got me to that conclusion. The reason I mention it, I've seen other individuals tag you as such, but I know that you have done some studying from what would be considered the non-commodity books, the non-commodity texts. You mentioned the Book of Enoch. I would include the Dead Sea Scrolls. I mean, these are all things that were not included in what we know as the Bible.
Sure,
Yeah,
of course.
So,
but they were all actual texts. I mean, during that time, prior to the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE, all of these were standard reading materials. I mean, the apostles of Christ quoted Enoch. They quoted from the Book of Enoch. So clearly they all had read it. And even most of the very, I would say, the understanding of how he spoke of Father and everything, that all derived from the Enochian side. And now many people will say, oh, that's Enochian magic because there's that's true. There is absolutely that side of Enoch. They would say that Enoch was one of the greatest magicians ever. But that's not the premise. It's because it's kind of like many times, I don't know whether you've ever seen somebody accuse me of being a Luciferian because I talk about things that the Luciferians believe to be true. Well,
no, I've heard that.
It is true.
Calling you Antichrist and Luciferian. I've heard that quite often.
It's not that I honor Luciferianism, but what they do, because this is a Luciferian world, is true. It doesn't mean that you follow them just because what they're doing is true. It just helps you recognize that we live in the enemy's world. We don't live in the world. We're not from here. This is not a comfortable place for us. This is a death trap.
Right. Yeah, it definitely is. And I want to expound upon that here in just a little bit. I was going to trying to keep this in some sort of cohesive manner. I did want to ask what the butterfly reference symbology is and the 303.
Sure. Well, it's not really a butterfly. You can see on the hand. I mean, it is a butterfly, but it's not your normal butterfly. So
Right.
It's not like I plaster a butterfly on something. Sometimes I'll put a butterfly on something, but people know that it really relates to this. This is also cryptography. So it is, it's the 303, but it's not a single, just like cryptography, just like the Bible. When you're reading directly in Hebrew, you only have the initial letters. You don't have any vowels. So somebody has to tell you what vowels there are. And that's what allows them to have the oral law, right? So they tell you what it means because they're adding the vowels in that make up the word. Well, what if they're wrong and they have different words? Well, there are multitudes of meanings for single images. Just like this image, there are no vowels here. You could say that the O is a vowel, but it's not. It's just an infinite structure. And then you have the V essentially.
Yeah, I saw the V.
Yeah. So this itself has thousands of meanings for me. Thousands. Okay. And it's my personal cryptography. Thousands of meaning. All of them you have to know. It doesn't mean that all of the meanings of it are true. It just means you have to know all of them. And the only one of them that is true is what unlocks all the rest of them. So unlocks the key.
Okay.
So it's probably one of the most difficult cryptographic schemes to bust because it is so personal. So if anybody really wanted to know what this would mean, you would have to live with me for probably 20 or 30 years.
That's
So
crazy.
No one's going to figure that out.
And it's a simplistic kind of symbol too.
It represents lots of things, right? It represents Christ. It represents a new birth. And it really represents the kind of core of it is the Vidius, right? So the Vidius is this tiny little moth butterfly. It does have 4 wings, so it is considered a butterfly / moth. And they're very, very rare. There are many different types of Vidius, but there's only one basic Vidius. They're incredibly rare. And they're the only structure that the DNA from the caterpillar that it was becoming the butterfly is entirely different. It is literally an entirely new creature. So it is transfigured itself. It didn't transform itself, it transfigured.
Okay.
So it is entirely a different structure, 100%. It's like me giving birth to an elephant. Doesn't have any human DNA in it. It's
right.
So that's really representative of what this is in me, is that there is that birth. And this is where people get messed up on it, right? This is where the church is taking these things. That birth in me was a virgin birth. There was a virgin birth mother. The spirit in me birthed that. And it's so, unless you've really truly experienced that explosiveness of it. And I always know when somebody has, and they're always never quite right because it's not easy to deal with. And I tend to believe that for myself, the Father made me exactly who he needed me to be to make that happen in me, and that I could handle it. Because other people that I know that gone through it, they're walking around in circles, twiddling their thumbs and going, I don't even know what to say.
Yeah, no, I can completely relate to that. I've had a couple episodes over the past few years where I might have had a slight close walk towards just losing it, but ultimately I was able to come through. I felt like some of it was like I was raising my vibrations and trying to get comfortable with the world around me again.
Sure.
Because I wasn't energetically the same being that I was prior to. If that makes any sense.
Totally. 100%.
Who is Yeshua? Jesus. I know Jesus wasn't really the correct name because J's didn't exist. They weren't invented until like the 1500s. Who is Yeshua to you? Like, who is he? Is he what you would call in the typical Christian viewpoint as your Lord and Savior?
That man, no. Love him like I love myself, because he did what I'm doing. And people say, oh, blasphemy, I can't believe you would say that you're doing what he did or even compare yourself to him. Nonsense.
Right.
Nonsense. I love him because he had the tenacity. He followed through. He clearly had that same experience. That's what the 40 days in the desert was. He clearly got to meet God and wrestle with him, which is what my son Israel means. Israel means to wrestle with one who wrestles with God. He got to wrestle with the God of this world. He got to wrestle Satan. And that's the whole point of that 40 days in the wilderness. And once he denied him and said, you know what? I'm done with you. I'm done with you. I know you're powerful. I know you can melt me. I know you can make my life miserable. I know you can, but I'm done with you. And now I'm coming for you. I'm coming after you because you're a lie. And it's not a hatred. It's more of a disdain, because, and I can hear that in Christ's words. So when people say, oh, is he your Lord and Savior? I'll go, Christ in me is what saved me. But that man, he did what I have to do. He picked up his cross, he carried it, and he died on it.
Which is what it says in Scripture.
And I'm going to do the same thing, the same exact thing, because they're going to bring it to us. Trust me, we'll all have that opportunity. As long as we're standing in this, we're going to have that opportunity.
Yeah,
And
because I mean, I think I've heard you say that you would be willing to um, give your life for this.
oh, without even a hesitation, in 2 seconds flat. It's and when people can say, oh well, let's see what happens when they come up and and put your head up, be like, let's go, let's get out of here. If there was an asteroid that I saw coming out of this window right now, coming down to, I'd be finally, let's get this over with, right? Because
Right.
that's really what this is Christ came to explain to you exactly where you're at and who's running the show, and to explain to you how he's deceived you. And he had to say it in very much the same times that we have. In fact, probably worse times, because I think they probably had a much easier trigger finger. And that's why he was always counting his time. Like who do they say I am? Because I know once they start saying that I think I'm God, and that I'm convincing people that I am, because it's true, because God is in me, right? They're going to see it as an individual, and they're just like the people that came after me before prison. The same thing, the intimidation of that, they're going to come. So he was always asking, what time is it? What time is it for me? How much longer do I have?
Right.
What did they say? They said that, did they? That's why he said, when I did that, well, he would do something and he would say, don't tell anybody about that, because all it's going to do is shorten my time, and I got some work to do. Because once they figure it out, once they put their finger on it and they understand who I am and what I'm doing, they're coming.
Now, when you mentioned Jesus in the desert, Yeshua in the desert, and the 40 days and the temptations of Satan, and then you mention Israel, meaning wrestled with God, and in the scripture it talks about literally him wrestling an angel. Are you saying that that Satan is the same character from both situations? Did Israel wrestle with Satan?
Well, Israel means, that's why Jacob was given that name, because he wrestled, right? So he wrestled God. So, and I would say that every single one of them, that's why David would be the king of Israel. Doesn't mean that David always was honoring, God. That the entire Old Testament is a battle between the real God and the God of this world. That's why 2 Samuel chapter 24, David has to handle these two gods that are telling him two completely different things. God tells him to count the people for taxation and war. He does, and then God punishes him because he did that. So these are the types of things, and I'm just summarizing that, but those are the types of things. And also 2 Chronicles, you can get a confirmation of it as to who that is. And people will say, well, it's Yahweh. Well, okay. Well, then now you understand, if the God that told him to count the people for taxation and war is Yahweh, well, now you know what that is, because your father isn't telling you to count so you can go kill people,
Right?
Because that's not who it is. That's not who he is. They're all fallen for him. And that's exactly why people want, and this is the trap of it as well. And this is what wrestling with God is. I'm still wrestling with him. Right. And until he shows up face to face and I get to stand with him. And hopefully there's a whole lot of people watching, because I'm going to absolutely whoop his ever loving ass.
And you're talking the God of this world?
Totally. And trust me,
not Father, Creator, Source.
No, it's because, see, look, the people tend to believe they neglect to hear Christ when he said the kingdom cannot be seen in anything that is observable. You can't pick it up and say, or it's there. You will never observe it. Not here, not where we're at. And so we're going to constantly battle with the principalities, right? These are unseen forces. This is a dimensional situation. We are in a trap here that has much greater, and as a technology guy, specifically around decentralization, I can see the enemy's weapons in all of us. It's a hive mind, and they do it and they use it. And it is our minds, because we are the most powerful on this planet. We are the most powerful here in this prison. We are the ones that create and build it. So the warden has convinced these people to build the prison around themselves. So they built themselves a pretty nice prison. It looked pretty nice. It's comfy, and, and hey, just do what I tell you to, and it'll all be cool. But in the end, I want you to do my works too. And I'll show you my works. And so this is the enemy talking to us. And so when we read in the Old Testament that, that God is angry and he's a jealous God, I mean, people neglect to think about the statements that they believe. God's a jealous God. First of all, if there's only one God in your mind, then the only thing that could make God jealous would be another God.
Yeah.
And if he is who you say he is, or believe and keep saying, oh, he's perfect and all of this, then what in the world would he have to be jealous of?
Or even angry about.
Or even angry or upset. And if he was upset because we defied his word, well, then he screwed up in making us because he didn't make us perfect like him. So, and by the way, in the Garden of Eden, it was Eve ate the apple and then Adam did. Okay, well, you know what? Who let the evil son of a bitch into the garden anyway, if it was God's garden? So I'm sorry.
I guess it would have to be God.
You're an idiot. And this is where you get into the Sumerian text and start to understand these things. It's kind of the same way that, when people feel that they need to defend God. Really? He needs you. He needs me. He doesn't need me to defend him. He does fine all on his own. Yeah. But what he does need me to do, and you too, is to speak of him, the real one. Speak of him, because you are the only voice. And this is where you are made in the image of the Father, right? You are made in him, because he's not speaking to anybody except you, and then you speak to somebody so they can now hear him, because it requires a very, very different ear, and it requires very, very different eyes. And that concept and that understanding is something that people just cannot grapple with all the time. But we are in a world, as I've said, it is a death trap. Everything here dies. And until they understand that that is a destructive, let's say it's a test. Let's just say it's a test. People say, well, this is where God, refined you and test you. No, Satan refined you and test you. Satan is the refiner. So if he has any one job, you can point to Job, where he has a job to come down, because in Job, Satan is lounging with the angels, right? And hanging out.
Chilling with God.
And God says, where you been? And he says, oh, I've been going up and down and to and fro. I've been crossing earth. I've been crossing the place, right? You're the cross. He's the cross. He's death. This is his show. So in doing so, he's going to refine you, because he wants to keep you here. And so he automatically becomes a refining factor, because the only way you get out of this trap is to deny that God, because he offers you everything. And he will, because once you actually know he's God, he's going to come see you. He's going to come see you. Once you actually understand that, he's going to come visit you. And that's why I always tell people, and that's why Christ told people, if they reviled me, how much will they you?
Yeah.
They hated me before they hated you. And that's why I say, they hate me. Well, so they're going to hate you too. What, you're expecting something different? You think that somehow you're going to add some spice and maybe some icing onto this and make it so people don't hate you? No, you're not. And it's not intended. It's a refinement factor. People are going to be confronted with this. So we're going to be refined. We're going to drop our ego. We're going to deny Satan. We're going to deny all of the things in his world. We're going to deny it. I don't want it. I don't like it. I refuse it. And I refuse to be a part of your system. And I'm certainly going to refuse anything that you can do to me that would make me do something beyond my or my Father's will. End of story.
I love it. And one of your earlier videos, one of the two that I mentioned, you said, and it's pretty much stated in scripture, but it doesn't seem to be something that's taught in churches. Doesn't seem to be a traditional belief that this is the enemy's world, and that the enemy isn't who you think he is, and the God of the Bible isn't who you think he is. And you even mentioned how Yeshua accused the Hebrews, the Sadducees and the Pharisees at the time, of being vipers and worshiping Satan. So it's one of those things that a lot of people, I guess, would just say that is, like you mentioned, blasphemy and dogmatic. And it's crazy how everything got twisted. But then you listen to that adage that as above, so below, and then nothing new under the sun. It's just it's an interesting place that we have found ourselves in.
Oh, sir.
And so to go back to something that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, and then I want to kind of touch on some of the areas of spirituality, religion, some history, talk about some legal fiction, which may correlate with something that I'm about to bring up. And then if we have time, about the Bitcoin, crypto, and technologies. But you mentioned to me one of the last things that you had said after we had talked a couple times back in 2018, that I needed to learn who I really am. And I'm probably paraphrasing this because obviously human memory isn't perfect. So I'm just recalling what I'm remembering that I thought you said. But it was, you need to learn who you are and what your real name or what your true name is.
Mm-hmm.
And that really mind fucked me for a while. That's the best way to put it, in the most polite way to put it is. And then when I started studying some of the things in regards to legal fiction and understanding some of the potential possibilities of what could have happened with the birth certificate and social security numbers, your Christian name versus your surname, it made that some of that, what you said, start to connect some dots for me. And I talked to you on the phone since then, when we had talked about trying to do the stream, and you said we would talk about it when we do this. So do you mind enlightening me as to what kind of bug you planted in my head a few years ago and what you meant by that?
First of all, I love that it's still with you. That's why I do this, because it's that type of thing that keeps you seeking. I want to know my name. That's a very powerful statement. I want to know my name. Father, show me my name. Who am I? Who am I? And believe me, when you truly do seek, that name will be revealed to you. And what happens is, it's kind of like the indigenous people. From what I mean, even people that have seen a movie, Dances with Wolves, right? That was his name. They gave it that name,
Mm-hmm.
Dances with Wolves, because it's a character. It's something that he does. Now, what kind of man dances with wolves? Literally, which is what they witnessed him doing, dancing and playing and having fun with this wolf. And it's a predator. So it encompasses a character. And so when you begin to seek your name, it may be that to you. I don't know what everybody's name is. I also don't know what your previous names were, your previous life names. Kind of like John the Baptist,
Elijah,
who has said, if you can wrap your mind around it, John is Elijah, because that's probably the fact. So who are you and why? Because if you're coming into this truth and understanding it, more importantly, if you get it, if you understand it and it strikes you, then you have to wonder, why me? And when I ask the Father that every single time, if not you, then who? And so when I say your name, it could be a past name, but it could also be a present name. It could be a name from right now, but the difference is it'll be a name that you know. It's like that stone with a name on it, given that no one knows but you. And you know, the only person that you'll be able to ever reveal that to are to other people that know their name. And so when they come to me and they know their name, they're like, this is my name. And I go, I get it. Totally.
That's awesome. I mean, obviously, I don't think that I've gotten to that point, but I'm still seeking. And reincarnation did cross my mind because of, I mean, there's several things mentioned in scripture that are reincarnation related. And I question whether or not stuff like that was taken out of the Bible. But when I heard the legal fiction stuff and started learning about that, and then started seeing how, from my perspective, and it seemed to be in agreement with a lot of others, that this idea of a artificial legal entity being created when you're born that is not you, and how that interacts in the world, creating this legal fiction matrix, kind of like a world on top of our natural world, replacing nature, replacing natural law with man-made law, just completely distorting everything. And a big part of me was starting to think that this legal fiction matrix was this Babylonian beast system that we needed to get out of. That in Revelation says, leave,
Get out of her, my people.
Come out of here, my children. Yeah. And so am I in the right direction of this from your perspective?
Yes. Get out of her, my people is not necessarily physical. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in this country. Because this country is really New Rome. Even Benjamin Netanyahu said that. He said, the United States of America is New Rome. And that's a terrifying thing. And people should really consider, if that's the position that we're in, then it's not going to end up very well for us. It's going to be quite ugly. But it is a non-subscription. It's not you not eating foods and not having that, that energy drink, and it doesn't have anything to do with that. People always think that there is some, I would say, some ritual that they need to do. Sorry, I've got my button here. Some ritual that they need to do. There is no ritual to be in the right direction, to escape this system and to leave her. It's to leave the heart of it, that you have zero heart for it. And that only happens when your love for it dies. It's kind of like today when we see this situation, and I see so many people that'll say they're Christians, and they're fighting so hard thinking that they're going to save this somehow, save this politically. If we can just get this guy back in office, if we can just get this person elected, it's not going to happen, because the entire plan of this is to do and accomplish exactly what it's doing. And this plan has been going on and repeating itself endlessly over and over, and the same strategies are used. This is why prophets could talk about it. This is why prophets could say, hey, this is going to happen. And they would say it in such a way that from a timing standpoint, from year or life, it would never make a difference. You would always be able to figure it out. And it's kind of like the lepers during Christ's days. They're cast out of the synagogues. We're having the same thing today.
Yeah, we have modern day lepers.
Exactly the same thing. So there is nothing different. There is nothing new under the sun. This is a constant trap. And the people that conduct this, let's say God reappears tomorrow. Let's say God, not our Father, but the God of this world, of the Jews and a people, shows up tomorrow.
Okay.
And let's say God is rather large. Let's say he's 35 feet tall and has power, and he can look at you and stop your heart if he wanted to. In this world, in this three-dimensional world, he could boil your face off your body. He could move a mountain from here to there. Would you be impressed? Would you bow down? The whole planet would, but very few wouldn't.
Right.
Because they know better. No matter how impressive, that's the God of this three-dimensional BS system. Full stop. We are not from this three-dimensional system. We do not honor a God that kills women and children and even the insects. Kill everything that creeps, walks, and crawls. I mean, cockroaches. Did cockroaches create the banking system? I don't think so. But, well, cockroaches did. Just human cockroaches.
Yeah, human cockroaches. The hybrids.
But you see what I'm saying? Is like the separation. Get out of her, my people. Get out of her in your mind. All of it. Get out of it. Separate yourself from it so you can see it for what it is. And this is why we can look at this movie that's going on around us today. And, Malia and I constantly say this. We go, this is not only is this a movie, a full-blown production, and you're talking to a guy that made 50 movies, like I know film productions, like watching what took place in Kabul at that airport and looking at what that airport looked like 6 hours after we left the last plane. It was a movie set.
Right.
Everything is conducted. Everything is a psychological operation. Everything is a false flag. And people go, oh, it's not a false flag. People die. Of course they do. They love people dying. It's what he feeds on. Or what did you not understand what a Holocaust means? Right?
Yeah.
Holocaust means burnt offering.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Who calls it a Holocaust? I'm just saying, if somebody calls it a Holocaust, it means it was a burnt offering.
That's insane. That's insane to really think about, though.
This is what I mean. They don't have a problem killing people. And so if God shows up and they're going to clarify, this is what I believe today that they're preparing for. I believe they're going to cleanse the place for him, and they're going to have the largest burnt offering ever. It's just what this place is. And until you understand that, there's the end of the age, and then there's the end of the ages. So there are the end of the world and the end of the earth are two very, very different things. There is the great and terrible day of the Lord, right? Great and terrible. It's
great and terrible. It's both.
Great for some, awful for others, right? So what does that look like? Well, the great and terrible day is first we have the destruction of the world. And that's taken place. A new reset, another one, just another one. It's kind of like, the destruction of Zion, Neo, he says, we've destroyed Zion 6 times and we become exceedingly efficient at it. No different. It's the same thing. And it's going to take place again. The difference is their tunnels and their holes in the mountains and everything. There is nothing new under the sun. We've learned all these things. What does Scripture say? They are hiding themselves in caves in the mountains so they can try to escape the great and terrible day. So that's really what's going to happen. We've got this first reset, but I believe they are preparing for an arrival. And that arrival will be saving his people, his chosen people, so he can restart this place yet again. Once the whole topical system, it's like, it's a refresher. This planet is going to be wiped out, and there'll be some remnants of some other pyramids, and we'll have, some remnants of some buildings and some things that 3, 4, 5, 10,000 years from now, people would find. Same thing. Reset of the people, of the government systems, and then there's a reset of the planet. So if that God shows up and whisks his people away, it's certainly not going to be me, because he'd be returning back and these people will inherit the earth. Who wants to come back to this place? Not me. What, to experience this stuff again?
Right.
Not a chance. Not a chance. That's how you really, and it's a difficult thing. People can't get out of the physical aspect of this because they don't have any spiritual life in them. They have no life in them. None. And that's why he could very accurately say, I got to go bury my dead. Let the dead bury the dead. Let the dead people, because they think it's important. Let them do their ceremonies over this.
Yeah.
We die right now, right here, and dying physically. Hoorah, let's go.
Yeah, bring it on.
We just don't go the way. It's going to be at their hands. We just don't go the way of Judas. You don't go over there and kill yourself. Don't do that. Let them do it. Be excited for that, just like Stephen, and say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Not because you like these people. You hope that they will be forgiven, but most likely not. But the reality is, he said that because he doesn't want himself to be corrupted. He doesn't want in himself to have hatred for them, because then that is a guaranteed ticket to come right back to this shithole.
That makes sense. I do want to ask in regards to the book of Revelation. Do you believe that, from your perspective, that there's literalism in what it says in the prophecy? Will there be a return of an entity that is the Antichrist, and will there be a physical return of Christ, or is that? Do you imagine the return of Christ as something different? Like some people talk about Christ consciousness and things to that effect. I'm curious about your perspectives.
Well, Christ consciousness is exactly what they would love to have, right? Which is what they're doing right now with AI and what they're doing with everything, including, the little sticker things and all of that they want to do to you.
So the hive mind thing is the same thing that you mentioned earlier.
A hive mind is a decentralized. It's a cryptocurrency, right, of minds.
Okay.
A single value made up of lots of different, specific, separate, decentralized positions.
Okay.
So the return of Christ is already happening. That's why he said it'll be as though lightning strikes in the east and also flashes in the west. And if they say that he's arrived in the desert or over there, don't go, because that's not what it's going to look like. It will be like lightning striking in the east and flashing in the west, all over, everywhere. And what that is what's happening right now. People waking up to this understanding and separating themselves from that world. That is the return of Christ, because then there won't be just one guy walking across the river with 5,000 people. There's going to be, 100,000 of us, or 200,000, or 4 million, or 10 million. There's going to be a much larger swath, but make no mistake about it, it's still a narrow gate and few find it. So what does narrow mean? Well, it means single file. And what does few mean? It doesn't mean 3.5 billion Christians. Right. It doesn't mean 1 billion Muslims. It just doesn't. So it's going to look quite different. The difference is the culmination of this. As these things begin to fall and we begin to stand, everybody around us will become more dead. They will become less unique amongst themselves, because they will also be rising up in the Antichrist. The enemy shows up the second Christ shows up. Christ shows up the second the enemy shows up, because they are only, Malia always does this. They're just one standard deviation from the other. Just tiny, right? Wicked is bent. So if you start from here, wicked means you start from this spot. Wicked just means bent, just slightly off. So how far away are we from being where we're supposed to be now through that period of time? So understand that as Christ is rising, so is the Antichrist. And the Antichrist is one that says, I can't be individual. I have to now do whatever is for the greater good of the greater number.
Which
and you're
is
watching
exactly
that
what's going on right now.
Do you see what I'm saying? You're going to do what the good for the greater number. So they're saying you have to do this. You must do this. You must be part of our hive mind. You don't have a choice. See, now the difference of Christ is that we are all individual, but we have of one mind, of one accord. But see, they'll also say we're of one mind, of one accord. Do you see how similar they're going to be and how similar they are? This is what makes this so difficult for people to comprehend, because the Antichrist and the Christ are so similar in how they will speak, but they just have a different idea as to what it is. But you won't know necessarily the difference, because they'll both stand in very, very different things. But I promise you, where it says this gospel will be preached the entire world, that is yet to happen, because they're going to know it. The whole world will know who we are, because they will have us held out and lifted up as the examples of who not to be. They're already doing it.
Yeah.
They will put us on stakes and say, you see what happens to those people that don't take our stick, that don't let us stick them?
Yeah. No. Yeah. Who don't go down with these forced vacations and such.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I've thought about this a lot. So, but you don't think that there's going to be like an actual physical individual in either of these roles, the Antichrist or Christ?
I believe there will absolutely be an individual or entity that is representative as the Antichrist, and most will believe it's Christ.
Yeah, I mean, even the book of Revelation says that many will be deceived, because I mean, in a way, it's going to be mocking and trying to follow the things that Christ did in his time here, from my comprehension. And that's where I was wondering, are you familiar with this idea that people talk about and what used to be termed like the free man movement, the sovereign movement of the birth certificate fraud, and us being surety, bonded surety and such. Are you familiar with this concept?
Very much. I'm very aware of it, that our birth certificate itself, our social security number, the birth certificate's a number, we're traded, we're equity. Absolutely, we are.
Is that in any relation to this spiritual warfare? And is that even a part of coming out of Babylon? Does it mean something like actually physically coming out of Babylon in addition to spiritually coming out of Babylon, coming out of the world, coming out of the secular?
I would say not, because it wouldn't be regulated. Let me put it this way. Come out of her, my people. If the Father says, come out of her, my people, or you know that you need to separate yourself from that, all you have to do is understand who controls those gates. So, if I'm not successful in convincing them to tear up my birth certificate, then I'm not saved. Sorry, that's not how this works.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, where people, again, that's attaching themselves to something that they must do in the physical form. It's the same reason why religions end up going for traditions or rituals or things like that. So people can see their righteousness, and people will believe that they're righteous. Oh, I'm righteous because I go to church and I do this and I pray at the altar and I put my money on that thing and I do all the stuff that I'm supposed to do. And that was why Christ specified so handily. They would ask him, what do I need to do to be righteous? He says, well, keep all the laws and do all of that. And they said, well, I do that. And he says, okay, now sell everything that you have and follow me. And the guy that he said that to, now that doesn't mean that he's saying that to every single person. He was saying it to that guy because it said right after that, and this was very difficult for him because he had great wealth and great possessions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he struck that guy with what was his hindrance, what hindered him, right? So what is yours? What is mine? Probably different.
Right.
You need to give up. What do you need to? So for me, it was not being a part of the corporate world at all, not being a part of it, not buying any of it, not having a problem saying I've gone to prison, because to me, I think that's probably one of the most amazing places and one of the most amazing experiences you can have. That any person, amazing experience, remarkable. It's something that most people will never have the opportunity to do. Because why? Because they're terrified of it.
Right. Well, it's because there's been such a stigma put on it. But yeah, once you get into someplace like that, you start realizing the goodness in people and seeing people in a different way. And before I went into prison, I had a breakup of a relationship and was living with this individual and decided to go into homeless shelters in between knowing I was going to go to prison. And that got extended out, and I ended up staying with a friend of mine, but I was in shelters for about 4 months. And that gave me a different insight into people, good and bad, both. I mean, the best of both worlds. Just you see some of the greatest, most caring, loving people, and then you see some of the most selfish people as well. So it's
well, that's the great part. But it's no different than on the outside. They're just at a different level, right? It's just at a different level. But I can tell you the amazing thing, and you can tell me whether you ever experienced that. I think, it was so awful, awful, awful. And then all of a sudden, one day I'm sitting on the bunk and I'm having a conversation with 2 other guys, and we're just laughing and chucking it up and, sharing some chips and some things that we had and everything. And for about 30 minutes, it was like just hanging out at a bar or at your house in the backyard and I completely escaped the place. And I realized this place is just a different wall. It's a mental situation that you have to get around, because I really enjoyed that time. I thought, wow, if it was always like this, I wouldn't mind. And so I just created that. I was confronted many times that people thought that I was starting uprisings because I communicated with whites, blacks. It didn't matter what gang, could be bulldogs. I didn't care.
Right.
Like Muslims. And I had some people come up. This Muslim dude came up to me and he said, I want to talk to you. And I said, yeah, well, what about it? And he goes, takes me off to the side, and he's trying to be a huge dude, being all cool and everything. And he said, I want to know why the biggest motherfuckers on this yard are scared of the smallest motherfucker here. That's exactly what he said. His words, not mine, folks.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, you would probably have to ask them, not me, but you know, I just love them and I communicate with them. I'm trying to just help them help them understand where they're at and how important it is that they're here right now. He said, what do you mean by that? And I go, well, I can tell you right now, this isn't being arrogant to me, but I can tell you right now, I know what the Father has for me and I know how important it is. So the mere fact that you're even having a conversation with me, I want you to know that you must be really, really, really important, because I know how important what I'm doing is. So none of my time is wasted. Not a single minute, not a single interaction, not a single person. Everything is meant to happen. I'm supposed to know all of these people, even bad, even the guy that beat me up, even the cops that tased me 7 times, all of it. All of it's supposed to happen. They're all important. And that changed things. That changes people. And all of a sudden, that environment could become very real to them and very livable and very beneficial. I mean, how many people did you meet in prison that thought that was a good thing for them? That's what I try to help them understand. This is a really good place to be. And I would always tell them, and I'll say it right now, there will become a time. I saw this vision while I was in prison. There will become a time where people are trying to break into the prison to try to stay away from what's happening outside of it.
That would be a really interesting concept, but you know, and I can agree with everything that you said about being inside a prison, but then also I've noticed being out, and I've been locked up in local jails several times, which is actually worse than being locked up in prison because you're
way worse
inside of a little building and such. But when I really feel like we're still in prison, no matter if we're in that building or not. It's just and it feels like now I'm starting to see the fence.
Sure.
With everything that's going on now, with everything over the past 2 years and everything that's been escalating since at least 1913.
Yeah, you know, the incredible part is I've done a number of videos on when I talked about this being a prison system, and I also talk very much about, and believe me, we're there right now. You can see the fences. Now, let's say that you can find a way to cut a hole in the fence and open the fence up. How many people do you think will go through that hole with you? It's not easy to convince people to leave that prison.
It also kind of depends on if there's some dudes with guns on a gun tower and people driving around the perimeter of the fence, and how likely am I actually able to actually escape once I get beyond that hole?
Yeah, it's not easy, and forget about the guns. Like, let's say you could find a way for them to leave without any of that risk. Believe me, you would still have a very difficult time convincing 99.9% of those people there, because they don't know anything else. I only know that I need to try to get out and try to not come back in, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
and
people come institutionalized,
and they don't want to risk that, because what's on the other side of that, they don't know. Well, then I might be on the run. Yeah, guess what? Leave this world, leave the systems, see what happens. It's no different. It's no different.
I agree 100%.
Leave this world, they will try to bring you back in constantly. And the enemy will work on you, and the enemy will work on the people working with you, people that donate money to you, right? They'll try to donate money. Oh, I'm just giving this. Do whatever you want with it. You know, we just want to support you. And if it's a significant amount, all of a sudden, well, hey, I really didn't like what you did with that. Well, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you not hear Christ when he said, give with your right hand, don't let your left hand know what the right hand did? That's the split person, right?
I get that a lot too. And I have to also put a disclaimer on that. Just because I have somebody on my show does not mean that I necessarily agree or endorse what 100% of what people are saying or anything. And I try to do that to be respectful, to learn, to challenge what I might think I know or believe, and progress from that. And hopefully other people can as well. And what I would say that sums up a lot of this is, you will know them by their fruits, and the truth stands on its own and doesn't need to be defended.
It doesn't. And when you speak the truth, if it's truth inside of you, there's nothing to, and that's why I always say when somebody wants to debate with me or argue with me or something, it's usually for a couple reasons, but all of them are about the same thing. It's because I destroyed something that they believed in and it made so much sense. It concerns them. And because it concerns them, the only way that they can re-believe what I destroyed is by hearing themselves say it again with passion, and me hearing them say that. So they can reaffirm, they need to restate themselves. So again, they arrived at their belief with a magical incantation. Oh, I accept him into my heart. I went up and I said this. He arrived with a magical incantation. And so he needs to return with another magical incantation. And since I'm the one that destroyed it, they need me to hear it.
Yeah.
They want to say it to me. So I don't let them. I'm like, sorry, you're not going to use me to try to build up your false idea again. You didn't reason into your situation, so I cannot reason you out of your situation. If you didn't use reason, if you reasoned into it, well, then you'll hear reason and I can reason you out of it.
Right.
But if you didn't reason into it, go back to your magical incantation. I can't help you. And I'm not going to have that argument with you. And it's really a difficult thing. And, after 3.5 years of this, it's been hard, almost 4 years now. This is the hardest thing I've ever done. Because I love people so much, but I don't necessarily like them.
I can relate to that.
Right. And in the same way that I can love myself. And when I don't like myself, like I said in that last video, when something rises up in me and I don't like me anymore in certain ways, I'm like, yep, done. I will change that because I can, because I had to in my life. And I can change that. All I have to do is understand it and see it. Once I understand it and see it, I can root that out. So it's like, you can look at yourself and do I have anything, that's living inside me? And all of a sudden it pops its head. Yeah, I see that. You're going to rip that thing out of there.
Right.
But I got to be able to see it. So that's where I try to tell people, seek to separate yourself. And that's where the ego comes in. That's why, to rip your ego out of yourself, and people say, oh, well, you sound so egotistical. Confidence or an attitude about how I believe believe what I say, if that's ego to them, whatever.
Now, ego is that dude who is in a video with Cuba Gooding Jr., Tom Cruise, Nicole Kidman, Oliver Stone, and somebody else. The same dude, I think you had a Lambo.
That's ego.
That's ego.
Yeah.
But being confident in yourself, especially from a spiritual standpoint, is not egotistical. But I think that, it's what you mentioned about upsetting people is the cognitive dissonance when people learn something that completely takes away from something that they hold as a strong belief that contradicts it. And then they want to displace that negative feeling that they have inside because they don't want to admit the truth or admit that they were lied to or whatever the situation, and displace that back on you. And since I've watched you, I've noticed, and then also you talking about what transpired on your channel with your past and stuff. I mean, I've noticed where you have been humbled on multiple occasions to put you in check so that you could keep progressing forward. And I appreciate seeing that kind of stuff in growth of individuals, and I hope people see the kind of same stuff in what I'm trying to do. I think it's awesome when no matter what we agree or disagree on, that you're trying to be the change that you want to see in this world, and you're doing that with your actions. Mm-hmm. And I have a lot of admiration and respect for anyone who's trying to do that, because that's the one way that we're going to be able to change this world.
No question. I mean, the changing the world that we live in is going to be changing people around us and changing the ideas that they have in their head and allowing them to be able to be who they really are, as I said. And it requires you, if you're going to try to find out who you are, the very first thing that you have to do is kill that ego, because otherwise you're going to keep arriving at the same conclusion. You are who you were. If you don't destroy that. Now, that doesn't mean that when you go and destroy that ego, that all of a sudden you're going to sit there and be this, this little, Japanese guy kind of guy that, is, oh, sensei, and that doesn't necessarily mean that. And humility doesn't necessarily mean being broke. When people say, well, I've been humbled because I've lost all the money I had. That's not humbled. That I know lots of broke people that are as arrogant. You've been to prison.
Yeah.
How much arrogance did you experience from some people?
A great deal.
Arrogance and ego, like in insane levels. So
it was the guys who were buying all the oodles and noodles.
Yeah. So not even prison is real humility. How you act in prison is humility. And the only way I can, and the funny thing is Christ's words saying, if somebody strikes you on your right cheek, give them the left also. Well, I did that, but not intentionally. It wasn't like I was trying to mimic Jesus in this situation, but I was in prison and just like here right now and doing what we do, people say, oh, you think you're so good, projecting themselves onto me, and they get pissed. Well, this guy, I didn't know him until he came up and cold cocked me from behind, rung my bell. And he answered my question. I've been saying that. I'll help her if she has.
No, she just, no, I was just highlighting it. She said that you did answer. She said that I emailed Derek years ago about his Alpha and Omega playlist. He answered my question. I've been seeking and finding peace within me since. It's not been easy, but it's been freeing. So I was just highlighting. I wasn't necessarily trying to distract you.
No. So this guy, he came up and cold cocked me, and he was all ready to fight. And just looking at him, he's one of those guys, even his prison garb is like, he's dialed up, his hair's all done. He's got his, his prison package issued watch and his perfectly whitewashed shoes. And he thinks he's just amazing. Right.
Yeah.
And I looked at him, he rung my bell pretty good. And I just looked at him. I said, brother, if that truly helped you feel better about yourself, if it really, really, honestly, if it really did, you can go ahead and do it again. I won't even hit you back. And that flipped his lid, dude. Not only could he not touch me, but he was so angry. Angry. It was like, and then it wasn't until later he was like, bro, I don't know how you did that, man. How do you do that? I want to be able to do that. Because what he experienced was just my humility at that point. It was humble. I wasn't, because if I was operating out of ego, I'd have torn him to pieces, but I wasn't. And I knew that he was. And so if the only way that he could really come to terms with that is realizing that it took more power, more strength, more toughness, and truly far more confidence to do what I did than to do what he did.
Yeah, because you're fighting two battles. I mean, you're kind of taming your animal inside of you, the natural instinct to fight. Mm-hmm. And because if you're going to stand there and take it, that's not what I would call being a coward by any means either, because there's a difference in letting somebody hit you because you're scared, which obviously those individuals can tell that, and then the situation that you described. So it's yeah, man, jail is such an interesting place, and people could definitely learn a lot from it. And I'm starting to think that when we experience a lot more economic turmoils, because I know that it's coming, the world will be a lot more like the bartering system in prisons and jails, where people are trading things that we need in everyday life to get the things that we need from each other. So that'll be kind of interesting. I do want to be respectful of your time. Hopefully, we can do this again in the future and not have so much time between.
For sure we can. Hey, I want to, there was a person in your chat says, you're lucky he didn't crack you again though. No, see, I wouldn't call that lucky. I would have actually liked it if he had, because at that time, because that would have been the retribution needed, because if he had, he probably would have gotten his ass kicked by everybody else, because it was everybody around that situation was immediately disarmed by it. And they would have seen him as being reckless, coming up in cold cock. That's kind of a welcome to prison sometimes, right?
Right, but you go too far, you've taken things too far, and you've lost a lot of people's respects because you've done things that would be cowardice,
Don't want to lose
a punk move, not being a real man, not being, because there really is an honor amongst thieves. It's not the same that most people would perceive it to be, but there is an honor amongst people to that effect. So
he asked me if I'd go for a third shot. Well, at that point, sure. I mean, at that point, what's the point? Because ultimately, and I'm going to tell you this.
Yeah, no, it's not pre-recorded.
Okay. No, Tracy, not pre-recorded. Tracy's one of my moderators, the first moderator, and she's quite remarkable. She works her ever-loving butt off.
Awesome.
But no, see, because at that point, the more that he did to me, the greater impact it would have on him later. Not from me, but he would ultimately, the more he proceeded, it would be awful. It would wear on him, because he basically, nobody wants to prove that they're tough against somebody that doesn't fight back. Because
you can't look tough. You really can't.
You didn't prove anything to yourself.
It's like beating up an elderly guy. What are you going to prove by that?
Yeah, put your hands down. You want to beat me up? If it'll make you feel better, if you feel powerful, if you'll feel stronger, then go ahead, beat me up. But it won't.
That's so interesting. I can only imagine how you would have been in prison. But I guess the last thing I wanted to ask you on today's stream, and I appreciate you being cool about future episodes, because I would like to deeper dive into things instead of being
totally.
So I don't think it's so scattered. I try to keep it as conducive as possible. But as a cryptographer and technologist, knowing that I have been involved in cryptocurrencies since early 2017, I don't worship money, and I don't make it a focus of my life. So that kind of aspect isn't there for me. But you talk about the value in distributed networks and decentralized networks. What are your thoughts on Bitcoin and decentralized cryptocurrencies, especially in comparison now to the governments issuing CBDCs and government coins?
Yep.
Because there's a lot of people who talk negatively about Bitcoin, theories of it being created by the CIA, it being malicious code in there that would allow for things that the code says that couldn't take place, and just all these different, and then even the word cryptography being negative because it's got the word crypt in it when they don't understand etymology, and when it really just means hidden. Yeah, like the word occult. Occult's not a bad word. It just means hidden. It's just somehow we've been conditioned to think occult means bad, so people don't look into anything and question the narrative that we've been taught. Yeah, well, crypto is really scrambled, right? So crypto is your key lock, right? It's just there's keys and there's tumblers, and you're kind of undoing those tumblers. It's no different. It is and it isn't. But for anybody to think that cryptography itself is evil, they could say, well, who are the original cryptographers? Well, they were the Sumerians and the Egyptians, and they have hieroglyphs, which is essentially cryptography. It's I wouldn't say inherently that that's evil or bad. Everything on this planet, first of all, let's just get that straight. Everything here on this planet, with the exception of what lives within us, outside of this physical body, everything here is death. The law of sin and death, right? We live by the law of sin and death. There is no escaping it. It is a death cycle. Everything here dies. Everything. So for somebody to say that something is evil here in the world and not say it's all evil is a little odd to me. And the Father in me, Christ in me, is the only thing that isn't evil. And I wouldn't say I'm not evil because I still have this physical body. This is why Christ entreated no man, because he knew what is in them. He didn't become friends with people. Probably a pretty hard dude to be around. I'm not that easy to hang around. I might be fun to hang out with for 2 or 3 days,
but you're going to hang out with me for a little while, and you want to kind of live how I live, or live by some of the rules that I have.
I can only imagine.
I'm going to nail you down. But I would say that cryptocurrencies themselves, I saw them when I first saw them, and this is before the awakening, because I've been involved in Bitcoin since 2009, and way early. I mean, I think I bought my first. Didn't buy a Bitcoin. I bought like 3,000 Bitcoin when I first bought Bitcoin. Right, so it was very, very cheap, and all of it was stolen, by the way.
I was gonna ask. I was gonna wait, but I was gonna ask. Do you still have any of that crypto?
All of it was stolen and lost. You know, I have one wallet that I don't remember the key for. I have one wallet here still. I would just have to hack it and break into it. That has, like 200 Bitcoin in it. So, wow. But I still can't get into it. So it's a worthless file.
Yeah, if you don't know how to get into it, then I don't think I can send anybody your way to help you.
No, trust me, it's not an easy one. And I remember, because I set it up. So
right.
Yeah, I set it up, and I remember setting it up. The difference is my key at the time. Had I had the ability to actually, the key was in my key holder. I created a key on top of my key. So, and then that key on top of that key was stolen. So getting into it is like a double whammy to try to break into this thing. It's not that, the funny thing is, if I really wanted to, I could. It would take me probably 4 or 5 months of really hard work to get it done. It's just not in me to do. And that's how, when people say, how do you know that you're dead to that, to the financial stuff? It's like, man, if I wasn't, do you think I would be still sitting on that wallet, not trying to get this thing open?
No, and I can attest to that, because I mean, even just watching you on YouTube, when I even said things about humbling moments, I mean, I know that you're not living a luxurious, lavish lifestyle, nothing compared to what you have in the past.
No, and everything that we have right now has been.
Not saying that you're Amish either.
No, I'm not Amish, but everything that we have has been given to us. It's been donated to us, and we're not coddling it, because the fact of the matter is, and if anybody is out there holding on to their possessions and all of that, believe me, when they come with tanks and people, they're going to remove you from your property, and they won't care whether you own it. Ownership to them, you don't own anything. There is no such thing, right? This is their world. Government is God. Full stop. So they see themselves as that. And so, but getting to that, I wouldn't tell people. I would say, if you're going to get involved in crypto, sure. I mean, we have a little tiny bit of cryptocurrency that we sit on as just in case, just so we can eat and do whatever. If somebody donates something into this ministry, first of all, we always give, I would say, probably half or more of it to other people. I'm constantly donating, and I don't tell people who I am and what I'm doing, but I'm constantly donating to other channels and to other people. And we'll do lots of things.
Right.
And, but people say, oh, how could you get involved in cryptocurrencies and have that stuff? And again, this is to that physical thing. They think that, but that's unrighteous. Is it? Here in this world, I'm operating in this planet. I'm operating in this world, and I'm going to feed myself through that. Yes, the reason why I have it is because somebody gave it, and we are living with that, not living in luxury, not putting everything we have into it. And it's the same thing with a dollar. If somebody would rather have dollars than a cryptocurrency, well, then I would say that you're probably more evil, because you're trying to prop up something that is more oppressive than anything on earth. So I don't see cryptocurrency oppressing anybody. And that's what I like about the decentralized aspect of it. It's why I always liked the decentralized cryptocurrency. I always looked at it as a hedge against the Fed and central banks and all that. But as you've seen, with regulations on top of Coinbase and all of these other, you can see them creeping in, right? And you can also see, I mean, to watch the crypto markets today, when people go, oh, well, it's going to do this and it's going to do that. Trust me, they've already got AI running around this stuff. Mm-hmm. And to have if I wanted to manipulate Bitcoin, I'm just going to tell you how I would do it. I would build a bot. I would build an AI bot that actually paid attention and that paid attention and learned. but I would have to put probably $1 trillion into it. So I had unlimited money, and that bot could trade in any cryptocurrency, and I could buy it and sell it, and I could manipulate it that way. Well, that's what happens. Have you watched those moments when the cryptocurrency, I wish I could show it right now, where every single turn on the entire thing is exactly the same thing across 25 of the top cryptos.
Yeah, no, there's definitely bot trading, wash trading, or I guess some people call it, in not only the crypto market, but the traditional market.
Oh, of course.
And this was the thing that I thought that you would recognize, and I think that you would agree, is that, yeah, there might be regulation coming in. Coinbase just signed a deal with Department of Homeland Security. I don't know if you saw that, another deal with them. There may be like the CBDCs, they may try to blacklist certain Bitcoin that was used for nefarious reasons per the government. And so the fungibility factor doesn't come in, which is something that's important as well. I was looking at this as our way out of this fiat debt-based system. And that's kind of how I was correlating this debt-based system as like a sin, and correlating that to the legal fiction with the birth certificate fraud stuff that I had mentioned, and then the spiritual aspect of this being a spiritual war history, how this goes all the way back to Babylon, Mesopotamian times. I have a wild imagination, but that's where my mind was going. And I was looking at this as, and you can understand exactly what I want to say, because of open source technology and being able to go in and audit code, review code, make changes to code. If we, the people, needed to have like a system to transact in, and they made cryptocurrency illegal, we could say, fork you and fork that technology. People get the same drop of coins they had, and now coin B that's illegal is now coin C, which is not illegal. And we just keep playing that game because nothing really has value except for that which we give value. Nothing in this world has any sort of value. It's all a psychological thing that we assign to something.
It's all belief. It's all belief. Well, see, and I'm going to tell you this, and nobody's ever heard this before. So the very first time anybody's going to hear this from my mouth is here. Right now, I've been contemplating and looking at building a cryptocurrency for one very specific reason, because things are going to get very tough here. Everything's not going to come crashing down over the next year, although things are going to get very, very ugly. But as far as a currency, so think about this: when you're understanding because Bitcoin is also a belief system, right? You have to believe it's valuable, and you have to trust it. So where does it get its value? It gets its value by what you put into it as far as US dollars. If US dollars or other currencies have zero real value because they're also a fiat currency, well, then you've built a fiat currency off a fiat currency. So it's just an exchange of belief systems.
Well, there's a mining and the power output that goes into the computers.
That's helping regulate what its value is, right? So where Bitcoin tries to emulate gold, right? When it's trying to reduce the amount of currency that's in there, it's going to make it more difficult, and it's going to make it more expensive for you to be able to mine it.
Right.
So it's the same thing. It's like, if you're mining actual gold, the reason why gold is valuable is not because it's rare. It's not gold. There's gold on every single continent. It's just really, really, really hard to get to and very expensive, costly to mine. Cost lives because mining is hard, because these veins travel throughout the most dense rock on this planet. What makes gold valuable is that you get that out. Now, if it costs me $1,000 an ounce as a person that mines real gold, $1,000 an ounce, and gold is only selling for $500, well, obviously I'm going to stop mining gold. That reduces the amount of gold that comes onto the marketplace. It's just a basic ecosystem. So and just think about this, because this is going to become, I think, probably more prominent, is that a very specialized token that is specific to a specific product that actually has value. So let me give you an example. If I could come up with a way to create fuel for automobiles, that burns clean and comes from something that I could grow, right?
Like corn.
And the only way you can transact in that is by the product that I have. You have to use that token.
That's what the government does with the US dollar and petro.
Okay. Exactly. But see, this is what I'm saying. But now they do it with petro, right? But they control the value and the even need for petro. So they control everything, the petrodollar. But this is the whole thing. It's like, I accept this token because I know that it represents what I gave you. I personally gave you this valuable stuff, and you gave me that token. And I'm going to use that token to exchange, and I'm going to work with, kind of like on a federated system, that guy's token over there who does the same thing. So let's just say that you have hay on your property, right? Mm-hmm. And I have horses, or I have cows for beef. So you buy my beef with your token, and I buy with my token. You buy my beef with my token, and I buy your hay with your token. All of a sudden, our tokens now have equivalent value between the two of them. We've understood where they are from that ecosystem of your product and my product. That is as secure as you're going to get. So it's almost like you have your own token, I have my own token, your neighbor has their own token. And so it represents, it's not that way nobody is controlling the value of my token but me. My token represents my value. How much value do I contribute? Right.
This is actually something I would like to expound upon on like a future episode too. And I think I've mentioned
focus on that
in private about this can totally be done, especially in a private setting using
precisely
PMA, a private membership association, or private contract association, or private society. And I've learned a lot about with Christ too. There seemed to be a lot of Christ in his teachings from what the Bible's written. There would be things that he did in public and things that he did in private. And the things that he did in private, we don't really know about, like what he said to his disciples, unless some of that was mentioned in like the Gospel of Thomas and the Nag Hammadi text and things to that effect. But that's why I saw a lot of these correlations with the Christian remedy for the legal fiction. I thought that was pretty interesting. And you mentioned federated systems. So I guess the last thing I'll touch on here too is because it's completely a federated system, is this website that you've created, renewtube.org.
Yes.
Using PeerTube, which I've learned was Fediverse, the federated verse. It's kind of, and this reminds me of blockchain, but without an actual ledger. It's just a distributed network, but not a distributed ledger.
Yeah,
is that correct?
It's far more, yes, it's far more effective because what happens is so you got RenewTube up there right now. That is an instance of so it sits on a server that I have. I build it. It's open source code. So I put this on. Now, the reason why all of these videos are on there, like you see, I've got videos from Dollar Vigilante. I've got,
I searched my stuff and actually saw one of my videos that was one of the videos that YouTube banned.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was an interview with Max Egan, but it wasn't from my channel. It was something related to Max and the Dollar Vigilante from what I saw.
Oh,
see, it says crowhouse at dollarvigilante.tv.
Yeah, because Max, when he got banned from YouTube, he's been sending his videos to or uploading his videos onto a PeerTube instance that Dollar Vigilante has. So see, Dollar Vigilante has their own PeerTube instance. It's there.
Oh, okay. But it interacts with PeerTube because you can just white label it and change the name.
You can white label it, change the name. He's also on PeerTube. So what happens is the reason why his videos are on my server, where you can search for him, even though they don't actually physically reside on my server, but because he's he's part of the Fediverse, right? So if I like his server and I follow his server and he allows me to follow his server, all of his videos will appear also on mine and searchable on my PeerTube instance.
Okay.
So you can build a PeerTube and not actually upload one single video, but have millions of videos on it because you just follow other PeerTube instances.
So anything that's where the Fediverse, the federated system of
federated
computers.
system.
Yeah, that's where that comes into play. So it connects up all the different versions of PeerTube and kind of puts all the information in a central way for all the different.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you downloaded your YouTube, right, and it was on your computer at home, and all of us did that, and YouTube went away, but somebody created something where all of our videos, without moving them from your server at home or without removing them from yours, but all of us could somehow connect and we could search everybody's videos as long as we allow each other to connect. So I can prevent videos from showing up on my PeerTube instance.
You can blacklist certain.
I can blacklist it, or I can just, if I don't like the guy's channel, I just won't follow it.
Okay.
Right. And if I don't like somebody having my videos on theirs because they also have porn or some other crap on their server, I don't accept their follow.
Okay. So you have ways of controlling it. That's cool.
Oh, totally. Absolutely. And I have ways of controlling what content you put on there, and whether it's, if it is graphic or something like that. There are definitely tools in it. It's extremely easy to operate, very, very efficient. And what makes it decentralized as far as the server side is that the more people that are watching it, obviously, you'll see when you start watching, it'll say how many peers are serving that video. It'll either be coming directly from the server, or if there's 15 people that have watched it, or that are watching it, or that have watched it and cached it within their version of this, then it'll serve it from your browser and my browser and other people's. Makes it very, very efficient. Now, if you look, see where it says download on the right-hand side?
Yeah.
Okay. So you can download, once you do that, you can download every single video from PeerTube. So it doesn't just exist here. This makes sure that all videos will continue to exist.
I like that. And I do like the idea of what PeerTube does and the Fediverse. And then I was going to ask you, since we brought it up, have you looked into what Odyssey library is?
Yeah, I like what Odyssey's doing. I like what Odyssey's doing, but I'd like to have my own Odyssey because I don't trust Odyssey.
Well, you could take the open source code from library and be able to.
I can do that and do that. It's not quite as efficient and easy as PeerTube. And so the whole idea for PeerTube for me was that anybody can make one.
And PeerTube allows you to do live streaming as well?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I wasn't 100% sure about that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I do like this Odyssey and library because looking into these video hosting platforms, this seemed to be, aside from the PeerTube idea and the Fediverse, this seemed to be the most decentralized content sharing platform. And I know the CEO and I know a lot of people who work for the company, and they're very pro free speech. The CEO was in New Hampshire as part of the Free State Project.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, he's a very, very big proponent of free speech. The only thing that he would really be trying to censor would be things that go against natural law, like your kiddie porn and your snuff films and things like that.
And that's why, the whole point is that you're never going to be, the second even you say, well, I'm going to make sure that we don't have that, you're going to end up with a problem, because now you have the tools and the mechanisms for censorship.
Right. Well, now to correct that, they can only do that on the Odyssey end, because Odyssey is a web-based, server-based. So that's where I can't say that library is completely decentralized. If you were using the library application on your computer or your phone running a node, that would be decentralized. They wouldn't be able to remove content from the library blockchain, from my understanding. But in a sense of library.tv, which got replaced by Odyssey as a competitor for YouTube, that was the idea.
Yeah, that's similar. That's kind of similar, that it doesn't remove it from the blockchain itself, but it's just going to remove it from, in other words, if I...
the interface, where people can find it.
Yeah, if Dollar Vigilante started uploading kiddie porn, I could just simply unfollow his server and it won't show up on mine anymore. It doesn't remove it from his.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I like that. That's really cool. So, well, Derek, I really appreciate your time, man. I definitely want to be respectful. I was you said you go for an hour or two. We're at an hour and 45. I was going to be happy with an hour and a half. I do appreciate everybody for tuning in. I do encourage people to check out the links below in the video description. If they're not subscribed to your YouTube channel, to subscribe on YouTube, and also to check out renewtube.org, which again is all linked down below. Before we do wrap up, though, I want to give you a chance here if you have any final thoughts, anything you'd like to add to the conversation before we wrap up today.
Well, this Patty Burris says, so Derek lives off of donations. How can he afford this venture? It's not about affording the venture. I do this work with these own hands, so I don't have to pay developers and to do things, and I do things by myself. I can do, if anybody that knows me and knows any companies that I've built in the past, I built them myself. I do all the graphics myself. I do all the coding myself. I do everything myself. I do all of that stuff. So, and PeerTube itself is open source, so it's free.
Yeah.
This is just man hours and a lot of it. I've put a ton of man hours into other properties that we've had. It's exhausting. It's nice to have people help and donate their time, but just to help everybody understand that this is not some venture that I'm going out and raising capital for and we're doing. I'm not saying that that I wouldn't work with some other people that have the same idea in mind, because I believe that these types of currencies and cryptocurrencies and things in the interim will help us stave off, because right now everything is connected to the systems, right? You're not going to be able to buy or sell with their stuff. And keep in mind, as you said, Christ was talking about these types of things. No question about it. Look, some of the very important things that he talked about is, number one, when they said, should we pay taxes to Caesar? He said, show me the coin for the tax, right? They showed him.
Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's.
Yeah, but they showed him a Roman coin, which was a fiat currency. And then when they asked, confused, his disciples said, well, when we go to the temple, do we still give alms to the poor? And he said, yes. They're confused because they're like, wait a minute, if we're supposed to give this stuff back to Caesar and not even have it, how do we do that? And he said, well, go in, cast your line into the sea, pick up the fish, catch your first fish, and then reach into his mouth, and that fish would be another person. And he will give you a coin. And the coin that he's speaking about, just generalizing for everybody, is an actual silver coin, not a fiat coin. So there was a very big difference between a Roman coin and a Jewish silver coin. So he said, and then you give alms with that because it's actual value. It's actual silver that has physical value. So quite different.
Yeah.
So
sorry, go ahead.
What I'm thinking about here is, if we're going to do anything, this would be a currency where we can, with our own values, with our own hard work, with the own things that we have, when we exchange amongst each other, this is how we in the body of Christ would work and communicate and communicate through decentralized systems, so we can be off of theirs. We don't have to adhere to those systems right up until they're going to take our heads off or going to kill us just because of that. But we would be able to transact with one another with an accurate representation of the value that you offer, with an accurate representation of the value that I offer in the product that I offer and the food that I give you. You give me hay, I give you beef, those types of things. So that's all that it is. We still have to be here for this time being. We're not all climbing into caves. I mean, if it's funny that people want to hear what I have to say, but yet they're disappointed that I'm not locked in a cave and becoming a monk. I can totally do that and just shut up. I'm totally cool with that. But I'm here to do this. This is why I'm here. And the reason why I knew all about this cryptocurrency and all of this stuff is I was shown all of that I've given you, all the things I've taught you will be used for this. So I'm trying to find out where that is.
Right.
It's as simple as that.
And I definitely want to talk more about this idea. When you mentioned about the Roman currency and you mentioned Roman similarities to the United States, people can watch Mike Maloney's Hidden Secrets of Money series.
Oh, totally. That's
part 9 and 10 does that comparison. And Rome, they did used to have their coins in silver coins or whatever the precious metals were, but then they started debasing their coins.
Yeah.
And started cutting out the circles and then replacing them with lead. And yeah, it's interesting.
No difference than the US, right? You grab a 1966 quarter and it's going to be all silver.
Yeah. Well, another thing too, there are cities now, like Miami's talking about doing a Miami coin. So we might start seeing local currencies. Mm-hmm, the idea of like devolution. I interviewed Cliff High and we had a really good conversation about devolution, about the idea of kind of the central government, the federal government losing its power, and a lot of things going back down to state and local levels. So, well, again, man, Derek, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate everybody for watching. If you could hold on 1 second, I want to go ahead and wrap up things on my end, unless you have something else you want to add.
Not a thing.
Okay.
We'll say goodbye to everybody, and thanks for all the Global Witness followers coming over here. I appreciate you guys coming over here, and definitely subscribe to, if you're following my channel and you're not following Rice's channel, please do so.
I appreciate you saying that, man. And vice versa. If you're not familiar with Derek's content, definitely check out his channel. And I really appreciate everybody for tuning in. If this is your first time ever watching any of my videos, I do encourage you to check out and explore my channel. And if you like what I'm doing, make sure you subscribed. Make sure you subscribe to both of my channels on YouTube and follow me over on Odyssey, where I have a full catalog of all my videos. And as always, I do encourage you to be the change by practicing change. And I love you all. Much love.